the words of the bard, Halloween in the death of the night, hear me scream. And our three brave critics may yet scream for your pleasure tonight, as Halloween brings them a tale of blood-curdling terror, a nightmare within a nightmare. The story of a young woman with an unknown future and a dark past. Next of kin. There's no place like home. Bloody home.
Hi, I'm November.
I'm Callum.
And I'm Daria.
The basic plot of Next of Kin is
Are we doing like a full plot this time? Because we never do that.
Yeah, I know, and I'm wondering if it's really frustrating to people that we don't.
It must be so frustrating.
So a young woman by the name of Linda, her mother dies. We start with the reading of the will and the next of kin. The mother has left this lovely home to Linda, which is run as a old folks' home. And
creepy occurrences start occurring. And it sets itself up on some of the posters and such as being more of a sort of slasher, I should say, horror movie.
I think both work, slasher and splatter.
Yeah. But it sets itself up on the poster and such as being more of a slasher movie, but it's probably more of a thriller / psychological horror.
It's definitely a slow burn.
Yeah.
And in fact, funnily enough, the re-release has basically got an almost Shining vibe to it, which we'll get into, but the girl with the red ball is not overly significant, per se. Do you think anybody's ever inherited a house in, like, the history of humanity that wasn't haunted?
Certainly not the history of cinema.
Even if I don't own anywhere, I think I'm going to leave a house to my people in the will, just because, screw them.
Can you make a model house that's got tiny, tiny ghosts?
That would be amazing.
I think we should do that.
We should do that.
You don't have children, we'll have to leave it to your nieces.
That's okay, my nieces can have a house that's
A
tiny
haunted dollhouse.
A haunted dollhouse.
You don't like them very much, do you?
A tiny exorcist. I love my nieces. But they deal with it.
You were bad friends right now. Anyway, okay.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned, this is quite a slow burn film. At what, like, if I wasn't told this was a horror movie, at what point would you have thought this is a horror movie?
See, probably not till at least a good third, maybe half of the way in.
Agreed.
I think probably the bathroom eyeball scene. That's when it becomes a Oh, actually, or the body in the bath.
What's the bathroom eyeball scene?
That's when she says, I can see you, and then she...
Oh, right, yeah, no. We're well into murders by then. That's right at the end of the film.
Yeah.
Maybe the body in the bathtub scene then.
But then it's an old people's home and, you know, old people die all the time.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. At this point, also, that's the only death, and as far as we can tell, it's a natural occurrence.
Yeah.
We don't really find out this is really going wrong until later in the film. Linda starts looking through the journals and discovers that people have been mysteriously dying in the bath for 20 or 30 years.
All of which happens, as November pointed out, at exactly the 1 hour mark, which we've talked about before. And I don't know if have we expanded on this? Have we expanded on this within a cast about the 1 hour mark?
You haven't even expanded on it to me, so no.
Alright, okay. So, there's,
Okay, but I have to say something about the bath afterwards.
Okay, remember the bath.
I'll
Always
remember the bath.
So there's some basic language in sort of Hollywood films, and there's the 20-minute mark and the 1 hour mark, and I can't remember which is which, but basically the 20
Well, one's at 20 minutes and one's at 60.
Well,
Thank you, I'm helping.
That's great.
Yeah.
So the concept is that at around about the 20-minute mark, you anchor the audience with the plot of the film. Now, it's not necessarily something that's always done in movies. It's sort of the lesser of the two. But basically, the 1 hour mark...
I live with you and don't know the 20-minute rule.
Yeah, exactly. It's a minor rule. It's usually when the protagonist's arc is established. This is what the protagonist has to do. They have to escape the alien, or they have to sort out what's going on with the house, or they have to do this or that. The 1 hour mark is really classic language, and basically that is the point when everything is established. Okay. Maybe having a bird
Hello,
feeder
audience.
table.
We put in a new bird feeder and it's fabulous, except now we have... What are they called? Peewees?
Peewees. Yeah, magpie robins.
Magpie robins? Yes. Loud.
Yeah, so the 1 hour mark is like a pivotal point. And in fact, if you go to any kind of classic Hollywood film, Star Wars, Die Hard or anything, and you basically forward to exactly the 1 hour mark, it is a pivotal moment. Sometimes the characters make a great discovery. Sometimes their motivations are finally put in concrete. Sometimes they need to do the same thing, but suddenly the stakes are upped to the point where people, when they're actually assessing scripts, will work out where the 1 hour mark is in a potential film. And if it doesn't have some incredibly pivotal moment, they'll often just disregard it out of course without even paying any attention. So the 1 hour mark is a really classic point of a movie. And in this one, the moment she starts to uncover exactly what's going on and where it's been going wrong is exactly 58 to 1 hour and 2 minutes in.
In fact, arguably this one doesn't have much of the 20-minute mark because it seems we do spend an awfully long time comparatively. This is why some people have, well, November said it was a slow burn. We do spend a comparatively long time setting up the business of the inheritance and the old folks' home and the family and the mother, sister and all the rest, so we know what's going on so we can be upset when it is upset.
Mm. We listened to the director's commentary on the special Blu-ray, and they actually talk about the fact that the first half of the movie is very much a slow burn, and they would.
No, they keep saying European.
European, yes, which we'll talk about.
They say European many, many times in the commentary.
So they really did want this kind of slow. It's almost a nice movie. It's almost. I mean, there's undertones to begin with, but the scenery's lovely.
It's shot beautifully. Yes.
The house is gorgeous, and the heart of the movie feels lovely.
So we first
with undertones
find a body in the bath. Lance, who is a resident at the retirement home, Charles McCallum, is headed to a bath, walking down the hallway. He's got his toiletries bag and he's wearing his robe. But the bath is running, so unless someone usually runs the bath for him, why does he think, oh, that's there for me? And then he puts his foot in and lands on someone's head.
Yeah, it's really weird. I didn't actually notice it until you pointed it out who was running the bath.
Yeah, I mean, at first I thought maybe he thought someone just ran it and wandered off, but then he starts to get in anyway. So
yes, exactly.
He has kind of a you snooze, you lose attitude towards baths.
And I will just point out that because there's no bubbles in the bath, it isn't that classic horror movie or movie bubble bath that carefully covers nipples and dead people. The only thing stopping him from seeing is steam and that weird
Well, no, he took his glasses off. He took his glasses off and put them in the cabinet.
So what was he so horrified about then when he looked down?
Because by that point he'd touched it with his foot and he was probably able to stare close enough to see, my foot's just touched something, this is worth the eye strain.
All right, okay. So it's resurrected his eyesight in horror.
I put my foot in the bath onto something soft and squishy. That really shouldn't be there.
Good point. Okay. That's the seaweed effect when you go swimming in the ocean.
Yeah, and also he just wouldn't have been thinking in those terms. He might not even have looked at the bath.
Yes.
I see corrected.
I thought it was very well done how they brought the body out of the bath. They put a towel while in the water over the gentleman's nether regions and pulled him out. Because, otherwise he would have been naked, which they wouldn't have probably wanted to show. Or wearing swimmers in the bath, and that just doesn't make any sense. Whereas there are other residents around that help take him out of the bath, and I think it shows that being respectful to the people, the residents, when one has passed on.
Yeah.
And that also, in general, was actually a pretty good transition, going straight from seeing what Lance sees, as in, oh my goodness, there's a dead guy in the bath, and that becomes the shot of them eating him out of the bath.
Yes, that was so well done.
Really love that. I love
really
the fact because what movie did they reference where the body actually comes out of the water? It was the French film Cabinet de Scalcari, or what's the name of the movie? But yeah, there's a lot of that whole the dead body rises from the water and it drips down the face. And it looks like that's what's about to happen, but then you realise as you pull back that it's actually just the cut of the next shot where they're actually taking...
Also, they put a false end in the bath. They had a sheet of perspex, so it looks like the camera goes... I'm using detailed hand gestures here. I just feel I should let you know that. So it looks like the camera is going down into the water.
The hand has gone down.
Yes, there we go. Thank you, Callum.
No worries. Yeah, which is really good because one of the things that's pointed out and something which I actually focused on when I saw a lightning strike that's portrayed early on is all of the effects are in camera. There's no digital After Effects. There's no post-production on this one. Partly because obviously it's an Podsploitation movie. Partly because it's 1982. Yeah, and just the technology didn't exist. So...
Oh, you were very much talking about the lighting thing. So did you find out how they did it?
I did. So there's a shot right very early on where what turns out to be the main antagonist of the movie and their offsider arrives, but you only know them as weird person and they're elderly.
Mrs. Ryan, and we never know his name. He's just called Mr. Ryan.
Yeah, we'll talk about that relationship because it's really weird.
Yes.
But basically there's a lightning strike which takes out a branch and drops it in front of a van. And I actually went back 3 or 4 times on the Blu-ray because I'm like, that looks really good. It looks like a lightning strike behind the trees, which is always really hard to do because normally the way lightning is done up to and including Back to the Future and Ghostbusters is you draw it in afterwards and you do the digital equivalent of what they used to do, which is you just paint it in over the scene. And if you want to do digitally behind anything, you have to basically work out, well, okay, where would this particular point be? And then you stop the effect where it is, and then it would appear to be behind. But this looked really good, and it turns out that it was done in a really simple way where you you didn't draw, rather, you hang a piece of actual fuse wire from where the strike is meant to go upwards. Now, I don't know whether the fuse wire activated the charge that drops the branch or if they were 2 separate bits. And then you just make it go live. And so you get this lightning strike that looks, when you see lightning strikes on YouTube where they take out branches and things, really good. A bright, angled, weird-looking line that goes down and then an explosion. So, yeah, all effects in this movie were done in camera, were done in shot. So, yeah, really
And done very well.
I think there's always going to be something about practical effects that, and I've probably said this a jillion times on the cast before, if not anywhere else, I think there's always going to be something about a practical effect that a CG, no matter how good, just can't replicate. Not even necessarily a matter of better or worse, but there will just be something about having something tactile with your actors.
Yeah, okay, fine. We can argue about the uncanny valley, which is, for those of you who aren't familiar with the term, talks about the fact that something that is incredibly not human looks lovely and cute and wonderful. Think E.T. or Johnny Five from Short Circuit. But that as you get close to being more realistic, the ability to actually absorb that as something nice gets worse and you get this little dip into acceptance level. And there's something about CG, that the way characters move, the way that high-speed actions occur, that just looks worse than if it was a rubber model that's done that way. So you could say the uncanny valley, but yeah, you're right. Just having a tactile thing that's got the same lighting effect, that's got the same shadows, that's got the same presence as the actual actors in a scene, at the moment at least, will always look that little bit better than just some random thing that's been added with ones and zeros. Which is not to denigrate CG, and it can be done amazingly in things like Jurassic Park, but it does take effort and, more importantly, money. So much money to look good. Yeah, so basically, Linda comes back. She's inherited this house with all of its residents, and she begins to suspect that things weren't quite right. So she is under the impression that her Aunt Rita, died at some point. I don't remember if they actually...
around 20 years passed, because when, surprise, Rita turns out not to be dead, she's...
You spoiled the film.
She's griping about having been sent away for 20 years, so... And also, Linda, who's 24, doesn't have any real clear memory of her.
Linda's relationship with Barney, who is John Jarratt. Now, Linda's been away, the movie says, for years, but when she gets back, when she meets up with John Jarratt again, they hang out briefly and then end up swimming naked in a lake, and then they're boyfriend and girlfriend, and just, it's like, they've, like, were they a couple and she's been away and then they just like, oh, we're naturally a couple again? Like, how does their relationship work?
Yeah, hey, how you doing? Let's grab a coffee. What about that naked dip? Sounds good.
I don't imagine there's anywhere there to get a good coffee. Maybe that's why you have to go swimming.
The water's pretty gross.
The water is quite brown.
Yeah. Maybe that's just what they use for coffee.
Yeah.
They've also got tins and tins of International Roast.
International Roast.
They probably do have that at the old people's home.
Oh,
we just lost a sponsor.
And those stale Arnott's biscuits that you buy by the kilo.
Or the ones that are like Schrodinger's biscuits. It's either biscuits or sewing supplies.
Oh, yeah, with that many people over 70.
They'd be definitely sewing supplies. There'd be a lot of sewing supplies. Yeah, so that's always really weird to me because, I mean, that is a genre in and of itself. Person from town returns to town and brings...
Well, there's always an outsider.
Yeah, well, you know,
Not
brings
always,
their
obviously,
problems back with them, like in Grosse Pointe Blank or something like that, or uncovers existing problems in the town, sort of Twin Peaks style, which, I mean, I know that he wasn't coming back, but they return, you know, and the town's history, Lantana style, sort of bubbles to the surface again when the returning comes. And I'm like...
That is a weird movie reference. Lantana style.
Yeah, well, you know, somebody comes back to the town and then the town's own weirdness returns. But it's like it could have been a returning type film, but that's just so glossed over. And can I just say, where did she get the kid from? At what point did she acquire the child in the opening sequence when she's returning?
So she mistakes the child for a dog, if you recall, because she's driving a ute into town. The truck stop. Well, the kid's not in the ute with a seatbelt. He's just standing on the back. It's like the child is meant to be inside the vehicle with the seatbelts probably weren't law in 1982.
Probably not. I don't think anyone wears a seatbelt at any point in the film, do they?
No.
Not that there's too much driving. Although there is the obligatory Mad Max sequence of driving down the road with the van because you've got to have, like... God, we loved cars.
We just trod on the Quadriplegic podcast territory because they're always talking about how in the past no one's wearing seatbelts.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So she comes back as this kind of outsider and people are there. One of the ones I wanted to note was Tommy Dysart, who plays the diner owner with...
The most amazing voice in the world.
The voice of 17 testicles.
Ah, good day, Linda.
Hi.
Welcome home.
Thanks.
Nico, get a cup of coffee for Linda, eh? What do you think of the old town, Linda? Not much change, huh?
Howdy do.
Well, there's a new public toilet. Took them 20 years to get that one up.
For younger listeners, well, after a long film and television career, he became very famous for a Yellow Pages advert in the 1990s in which he played someone who was trying to source parts for his Gogomobile. And and he did that down the phone. And that was what he kept doing, playing on that for the next couple of years. And
pretty much.
Well, if you know what you're good at, I'm not going to diss him for that.
And he's just great at spelling the first 5 letters of Gogomobile.
Yeah. Which also is a real thing.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. And apparently a terrible car. Like a really, really bad car.
Like a Trabant with a funnier name, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that one of the three-wheelers?
Don't know. I'm not
I
too
feel
sure.
we,
It
as
may
car
be.
people, should...
But there was basically the basic Go-Go Mobile. There was the basic Go-Go Mobile, and then there was the Go-Go Mobile Dart, which was the sports version.
That's right.
And you had to specify.
It's not the Dart.
It's not the Dart.
Some folks think it's the Dart.
But Tommy Dysart is one of these characters, or one of these actors rather, who does continually appear in film. Now, sometimes he'll appear in bad films, and sometimes he'll appear in amazing films. He was in The Man from Snowy River, in the original Man from Snowy River. He's actually the character who orders Jim Craig off the mountain until he can prove himself in some manly test of horse riding.
Is he Scottish
4
in that
wheels,
too?
just FYI.
4 wheels?
4 wheels.
And he has a Scottish accent, which is, I wish I could remember the name of the actor. I keep meaning to write him down as the sort of the stalwart. The main guy who keeps appearing in these films was in Razorback as one of the offsider of the crazy guy who has a British accent.
Who is the one crazy guy in Razorback? How do you narrow that down?
So do you remember the really, really crazy guy played by David Argue?
The rapist.
He was a rapist at one point, yeah.
You only have to do it once to get the name.
Yeah, his offsider is a guy who's repeatedly appeared in Australian movies.
Chris Haywood.
Chris Haywood, that's the one. And he's got that same accent. He doesn't have a Scottish accent, but he's got a British accent. And he's also very much a stalwart of Australian film, both good and bad. He also appeared in Man from Snowy River.
And The Cars That Ate Paris.
And The Cars That Ate Paris. And
Boar.
And Boar, which we haven't seen yet, but we might actually have to watch because there's something I want to touch on later, and maybe we can park it for either the end of this one or another one, is whether or not Podsploitation is dead as a requirement of what you need for an Podsploitation movie. Whether just making genre films in this day and age is just something people can do.
It's really difficult. As we discussed from day dot, Podsploitation is very hard to define. And this movie is problematic because the landscape isn't trying to kill her here. The landscape isn't threatening. They go for a swim and there's not a crocodile. There's not even a log shaped like one.
Yeah, no, we don't have any kangaroos. We do have roadkill. We have a magpie, I believe.
Yeah, one dead Maggie on the road.
But yeah.
So it was nice of Umbrella to label it under their Ozploitation Classic sub-label, so...
Yeah.
because see, somebody says it is.
It's
I'm
definitely
wondering if they actually had to move dead kangaroos off the road where they would have naturally been to make it look more pristine.
Yeah, it doesn't sit with many of the tropes, but then again, part of Ozploitation, as we get into more of the films, is actively railing against those tropes. One of the main reasons this film genre even began was directors within Australia and producers trying to say, look, we're not all Dad and Dave and that, and sort of saying, you know, we don't want to be seen as just picnic and hanging roll.
Terribly so. And I've only just put this together in my head. Maybe it doesn't feel like an Ozploitation film as it was meant to be in New Zealand.
Well, that's what I was going to say. This is almost like this one comes Ozploitation from another direction. So one of the things about Ozploitation is that they make it in Australia because you can do it on the cheap and you can do it for you know, with lower production, therefore your profit margin, if it sells, is going to be higher. And also you can fill in the gaps in the story by utilising we're in Australia or whatever. This one actually was originally meant to be filmed in New Zealand, and funnily enough, they couldn't get the budget for it at the time, so it came to Australia as a sort of an upgrade, almost, which is a little bit unusual. It's a bit unique in that context.
Well, I guess they had a backer to do it in Australia and didn't have one to do it in New Zealand.
Although they do give a nod to New Zealand in the end credits, so they at least recognise that. And it was meant to be a black comedy. It was originally...
How was it going to be a comedy?
It was Sticky Ends. It was a comedy about somebody who kills old people, and nursing homes would go from nursing home to nursing home and do them in.
Yeah, I think that's just called God.
Wow.
Controversial!
Oh, we just lost another sponsor.
I was going to let that one sink in.
God's not going to sponsor us.
So
he gets enough money in the collection tray.
True.
And from running woke. Woke sloth, sorry.
Yeah, so it was originally going to be called Sticky Ends as a black comedy. And they kind of revamped it, took out a lot of the comedy aspects, so there's still little nods here and there, and made it around a single nursing home as opposed to multiple ones.
Okay, so this is 2018, and maybe I'm just going with the I believe women hashtag. But every time Linda says something is amiss or she saw someone, no one believes her. And Linda says, there was someone in the house, and the nurse says, there's nobody here. It's like, it's an old folks home, it's full of people. What do you mean there's nobody in the house? Do they just not exist overnight?
I think there's partly this thread through the film that the residents just don't count as people because...
It seems it.
She herself does this later and says, oh, I'm here on my own. It's like, no all the guests are still here.
At least half a dozen people.
I noticed that. I mean, that was the thing. At the start of the film, it's like, oh, I've inherited this creepy old house. I'm all on my own. Oh, no, there's a scary person right behind me. Oh, no, there's nobody else. Oh, my God, there's 50 residents. So I did get that opening scene where...
I think part of it too is because the people she was most telling were the ones who started to have a good idea what was going on but didn't want to reveal it to Linda. Because Connie and Dr. Barton knew about Aunt Rita not being dead. They probably didn't immediately know that she'd pop back in and just started a killing spree. But that was the key piece of information. So telling Linda there's no one here because there's no mystery because you don't have a secretly alive aunt was part of their greater motive.
So
it's less gaslighting and shit lying.
I was just going to say very quickly, because one of the things I got, especially in the early stages, is that this thriller aspect didn't hit that kind of thriller scariness right from the word go. And I'm wondering if it's the fact that things like, when you have a classic house that's meant to be empty, you can then do figures in the window and you can do doors opening and closing. But when you know it's full of people, figures in the window and opening and closing doors,
much.
The scariness is, oh no, the old person's out of bed. Which, look, I totally get it. Old people should stay in bed. That's where they should be. What was that about sponsors? But it does...
We just lost our pensions.
We lost International Rose, so there's no reason for them to get out of bed now. No coffee. Why would you get up?
No, it's true. But yeah, it does kind of defang it a bit.
Can I talk about the killers?
Yeah, definitely.
So we have Aunt Rita, who comes in as Mrs. Ryan, and her son, and Kelvin. Kelvin is the one who drops her off. We are never told the relationship.
It's a weird relationship.
It is a weird relationship. As, like, when he supposedly drives off, he kisses her on the lips. It's not, like, pashing or anything, but it's a bit...
And she's certainly a lot younger than the character, the old lady that she's meant to be, but she's still very much older than Kelvin. So
She's certainly old enough to be his mother, which I think is where we're
Why
going
she was
here.
sent away
Yeah.
for 20 years. She got knocked up.
because I did actually, because
That would have been early 1960s, and that was when you still did that sort of thing.
Well, the 1961 diary was missing off the shelf.
Oh, that's a good spot. Nice one.
Yeah, no, I didn't till November mentioned it, and it was like, wow, yeah, you're right. So she had to kind of extrapolate from other bits and pieces that happened before and afterwards.
And it could be both. It could be that she was having illegitimate babies, but also was going mad, and therefore thought, okay, we can't cope with my crazy sister who's also bringing shame upon the house by having illegitimate babies. Let's just pack her off in a 2-for-1.
Right.
Now, the illegitimate baby, where did you get the pregnancy thing? Is that actually mentioned overtly in the film or not?
No, that's just us guessing
Yeah.
that's the relationship between Kelvin and Rita.
Because this is the thing, I mean, I know that certain things are left vague intentionally at times, but I kind of want to pin down the order of events. So, the two sisters inherit the house.
The mother and the aunt.
The mother and the
Yes.
aunt. And that's Rita and, what is the name
I
of the
think it's
mother?
Mary.
Is it Mary?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so Rita and Mary inherit the house. They run it as an old person's home.
Yeah.
Then old people start dying. Now, at that point, do we accept they're being murdered? That when she begins to read about these deaths of people in the bath in the diaries, and
Well,
Mary,
it
the
said-
mother...
Well, yes, perhaps because wasn't the list, cause of death on one of them listed as malnutrition?
And
Yeah.
another as...
Coma.
was- yeah, and I suppose pneumonia is a possibility if you're found dead in a bath, but if everyone else has been dying of bath, I think they just started to fill in things that weren't drowned in the bath in case someone looked up medical
Well,
records
death
later.
by bath. I mean, you know, these things happen all the time, and it's not as cool as death by stereo, but... No, I'll let that one sink for a second. That's okay. So, at that point, do we accept that one of the two sisters is murdering old people? At that point? Or
Oh,
is
yes.
it just coincidence? Okay, now here's the big question. Is it Rita or is it Mary? Because we always work on the principle that probably it's meant to be Rita because Rita comes back as being cray-cray.
Well, she's certainly murdering when she comes back, so...
Yeah, absolutely. But she then exposits to Linda about the fact that she's angry because the house was taken away from her and that it was always Linda's mother, Mary, who was crazy, and it was always Linda's mother who was going off the deep end. So is it possible...
I didn't get that.
Oh, you see, I don't know. I that was the thing I wasn't too sure. Is it
Oh,
possible
just
that-
because I didn't get it doesn't mean it's not correct.
No, it may not be
yeah.
even intended. But I'm wondering whether either the old people, because some of the diary entries begin to go almost Cthulhu-esque in there. There's things in the walls, there's evil, there's terrible evil, which would suggest a less than stable mind. Because we're comfortable there's no supernatural, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's the suggestion of it from the diary, but there's nothing actually ghosty and ghouly.
No.
Everything cool. Then, is it possible that Rita was driven mad because she's sent away to a mental asylum, when in actual fact it's Linda's mum who is the one who's gone off the deep end and is murdering old people?
Well, the biggest, or rather the only real spanner I can see in that work is that,
They continue to operate as an old person's home for the next 20 years.
and the bath deaths and what have you stop, so far as we can tell, when Rita's sent away.
Good point.
I'm prepared to at least take the surface reading that Rita was doing the killing stopped because the killer was sent away, and this should have been my house, it's your mother who's the problem, is someone who is resenting the fact that she was sent away for 20
Yeah.
years, and of course, it's someone else's fault.
Expansion of the serial killer mindset of it's always somebody else. So then, okay, so Rita is sent away. Linda is told Rita has died, Auntie Rita's dead, and then discovers when she comes back that her auntie actually lived and has been continually referred, and they're making payments to the doctor who's, I guess, providing updates on Rita or something. That's all a bit weird.
Actually, yeah, there
It's
is.
just vague. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why he'd be paying Dr. Barton, as he seems to basically be their nursing home doctor.
And he's also meant to be sleazy. In fact, apparently
Unless that they're giving Rita money, like hush money, via the doctor, so they pass it off as doctor's payments.
Okay.
But it's money going to Rita.
Or even maybe covering her expenses, in the crazy home. Okay, cool. That's the crazy home, the mental home.
There goes another sponsor.
It's an exploitation movie. We can talk crazy. Okay, cool. So Rita and Kelvin connect. Now, that's never explained. Kelvin is just a nutbar. But,
Yes.
I mean, in my head, for some bizarre reason, maybe it's other films, I kind of get the impression he could have been a person working at the mental house.
Absolutely, he could have been. He could have been another inmate.
Yeah, falls under the wing of Rita, who escapes.
There is, other than using the same surname when they first come to Claire, what's the place called?
Montclair.
Montclair. Other than using the first, the same surname, we just don't know their relationship.
No.
So,
But I think
but the same surname, well, it's a made-up name anyway, because it's to disguise Rita.
I think it's intentionally established to be creepy. I think they try to just make it feel weird and off and bizarre.
Okay, so Rita's been back for a few days, which also means Kelvin's been hanging around. Mm-hmm. How are they eating?
Soylent Green?
We never see them feed the residents. That's okay.
We do.
Oh,
We
yeah,
assume-
there is that one. There's that one scene.
there's that
They've
one.
got a dining room, so
yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right. So unless this doddering old Mrs. Ryan, who's actually Rita, is taking trays of food back to the son, I'm just like, how do they not realise he's in the house?
Well, they do. They let him in and they let him stay. In fact, the resident nurse actually says, you can stay here tonight. There's a spare room.
Yeah, and the next day when he kisses her on the lips, that's when he's leaving.
Oh, I never got that. I just got that he was always kind of there in the background.
Well, otherwise you would know his car was there.
So is that scene where he's driving the van away, that, as I said, the obligatory Mad Max road scene, is that actually meant to be him leaving?
I don't know.
Yeah. It's a little bit vague.
It is a bit.
Maybe he takes his van away so people don't keep going, oh, Kelvin must be here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what, he walks back? That's not exactly
yeah.
public transport.
Well, no, he takes, what's her name, sports car.
Carol's car. Carol, yes.
Or maybe he hits dinner with Carol and said, I'm totally not evil, it's okay.
Yeah, so Linda begins to suspect that there's some weirdness happening in the house. We have a death. One of the old people dies in the bath, which we've talked about already. She then begins to uncover the fact that there's not a plot, but that the doctor and the nurse are...
In cahoots.
In cahoots.
And possibly in bed.
I think they're pretty definitely in bed, yeah.
I have a feeling that this at least is an open secret because
Yes.
we heard them talking and then there was a bit of a come over here talk, and that's when Linda, listening outside, sort of smiled to herself and knocked on a door. I think she was going, if I got to talk to them, better be now before they start taking stuff off.
Yeah.
Linda
definitely.
does enigmatic smiling a lot, though.
And she does that enigmatic smile and grab the left arm. Did you notice that?
No.
She's often walking, kind of doing
really?
weird... Yeah, it's holding the left arm. It's this weird little... I am establishing that I am vulnerable but also self-contained. It looks very...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's
cool.
deep.
Yeah.
Actually, Connie, that's the nurse, she does a lot of enigmatic looking around too, and I think I can only guess it's just what she does since we find out that she's not actually the evil one at all.
Yes.
Well, right
She's
from the
in-
word go, that first attic scene, I must stand here and just stare at her while the lightning goes off. Let's not announce my presence.
Maybe she's just a generally creepy person. I mean, I know she's keeping the Rita secret, but at this point she certainly doesn't know that there's a string of homicide about to explode. So I guess, or maybe the director thought that Gerda Nicholson was just particularly good at eyebrows and grins and said, let's just get as many of these as possible. That's Gerda Nicholson, also known to a generation of Australians from Blue Evil. And thus to the next generation of Australians from Barjas.
Oh, yes, Barjas. Now, Callum made a really interesting observation
Yay.
when we were watching this. Yes, good on you. So we have Linda in her bedroom looking out the window, and there's someone standing there.
This bugs me so much.
Please elaborate, Callum.
Okay, so it's one of these things that appears in movies a lot. You focus on a character, you then cut to their point of view, and a thing is there. There'll be a killer, there'll be something they see, or whatever. You cut back to them, they get distracted, and then you cut back again, and you see that whatever it is they were looking at is gone. Fine, no problem. What bugs me is the times when you focus on the character, they're looking through a window, they see something, which Linda does when she's actually during the rain, she's looking outside and she sees what we now assume to be Kelvin sitting
Well,
outside.
she sees a person
Yeah.
standing there.
you cut to her staring, and then you cut back, and the person's gone. Now, we assume that that's okay because we've had our line of sight broken.
But Linda hasn't. She's been staring directly at this figure.
The characters never do. And I wonder, in those scenes, what are we meant to assume? Are we meant to assume that they just get over it? That they watch the thing walk away?
Or they watch it disappear into thin air?
I don't know if it's a thing specific to exploitation or bad films. Maybe I'll sort of point it out again and again. But I know I've noticed it on a number of occasions where it's the camera's attention, where it's our attention as an audience that's broken. But that the characters have never lost the vision, and yet they now just deal with the fact that whatever they're looking at is gone. It bugs me when it happens because it takes me out of the movie. What are we meant to assume? Do we assume that they just stop seeing something? I'm pretty sure I can think of modern films that do it too, but it bugs me so much.
Which is something it hadn't even crossed my mind until you said this today.
Well, I hadn't noticed this, but I had noticed it's relative where it happens a lot in horror and suspense film, a lot in action films too, where someone says, oh, look, then you cut to absolutely nothing happening.
Yeah.
And then there's the explosion or the monster and that. Like, either the character has a few seconds of foresight or we just wound back in the story a bit just to make it convenient for us to see what's going on.
Maybe it's that special movie time where a karate kick lands 7 times in a row or an explosion goes off. I'm sorry, how many times was it that the facade of the town hall in Cars at 8 Paris fell down? Did we 3 times
it was many.
or something?
It was, it was at least several.
So thank you for letting me vent on that one because that's, something I'm beginning to notice a bit more.
So what was the significance of the little girl with the red ball?
That's Linda.
Right.
That's flashbacks. That was the thing because I paid attention this time because we watched it a couple of times. I wanted to know whether it was her or not. She finds one of the old people in the bath. When adult Linda is reading the diary...
Oh, I see.
The mother
Thank
at one
you, Callum.
point
That's
says,
much better.
Yeah, a terrible day today. Linda found Joe Blow drowned in the bath or something. So it's her recalling. And again, this is
that
another one of those...
traumatic time where no one has any sense of privacy. Everyone just walks into the damn bathroom.
Which happens in other movies too, yeah.
I have been hearing noises in the house. Strange sounds all night long that keep me awake. Lights going on and off. Taps left running. My door was open during the night. I have not slept. There is something evil in this house. Something that lives and breathes the same air. What a day this has been. Linda somehow wandered into the bathroom to discover the body of Mr. Holden lying in the bath, drowned. This morning, my friend Frida Cartwright was found dead in her bath. What is happening? And now I know there is evil here in this house. Mr. Carmody was found in the bathroom, dead. It is nearly dawn. I'm afraid to sleep. The house is full of whispering. Dr. Barton came again today.
But yeah, that's another one of the tropes of the returning home thing. It's like one of the other ways you can play the returning home character is you de-scab memories that you've kind of suppressed.
Get the flashbacks.
And I guess that's one of these things.
Yeah, I mean, it's also possible Mary tried to keep Kid Linda calm or safe, where it's like, oh, it was just a dream, honey, and Linda just sort of shut it away for 20-odd years.
Yeah. And knowing what we know now about false memory and about reinforced fake memory... Obviously nothing that the point that they were trying to make at the time, but it is very interesting that she only kind of gets that clarification of exactly what it is she's remembering after she reads about it in the diary, which is, of course, what we know now is that if somebody tells you the same story about your childhood often enough, is you'll actually end up believing it without even knowing about it. So that's kind of cool.
So there are a number of points in this film that looked like The Shining.
Yeah.
But The Shining came out the same year. They hadn't seen it.
They may have been drawing from the same sort of psychological playbook of
what's
creepy
his
big
name?
houses.
Quentin Tarantino?
No.
Kubrick.
Big
God.
fat bloke. Not God. That.
Buddha.
Oh, for the love of God. The one who does cameos in his own movies all the time.
Alfred Hitchcock.
Alfred
Thank
Hitchcock,
you,
right, sorry.
Daria.
Sorry, I got distracted. I went down a rabbit hole there.
The Hitchcock Zoom, I think, is where we're about to...
Yes.
The dolly
Thank
zoom.
you.
Yes, the dolly zoom does appear. And in fact, the director and producer specifically talk again and again about how they wanted to make this look like a European movie. That after the black comedy of Sticky Ends, they were initially going for a very slasher type film, but then they dialed that back and decided they wanted to go much more for a European style thriller and horror. And in fact, he references Blood and Roses, he references Last Tango in Paris, a very, when I say he, the director in particular, really did go that very European style. So yeah, as you say, drawing on the gestalt established by people like Hitchcock, I mean he's European but he's British, that it may have just been the time. And we see that again and again. I mean, there's that phenomenon of multiple movies coming out at the same time that you almost say, well, they must be made with people knowing what's going on and turning out to be just
they've just come from the same
coincidence.
zeitgeist. So we haven't actually mentioned the use of Steadicam in this film, which is, of course, a mainstay now, but in Australia in 1982, there wasn't a single person who could do it.
So this was something that I noticed in the original when I was watching it the first time round, and then sort of expanded upon during the director's commentary on the Blu-ray. I believe, and I'm hoping I get this right, that Toby Phillips was a Steadicam operator, and I might be wrong about that. It was definitely a camera operator who had gone across to America and had done a course, which, I don't know if the course itself was run by Garrett Brown, but basically the guy who actually created the Steadicam, he'd come back to Australia. Toby Phillips, this is not the guy who created the Steadicam. He'd come back to Australia and he had actually promised the director that he could do good Steadicam shots because the director had been burned previously where he tried to use Steadicam and it was always ridiculously complicated to set up. And this has some amazing Steadicam work. The Steadicam operator was the only one of his ilk in Australia at the time. He does some amazing shots up and down stairwells. He does amazing shots down corridors. There's one fantastic shot where Linda and Connie kind of sort of have a mini confrontation at the clothesline, and then Linda walks away in a bit of a huff, and the camera actually starts on a crane above, and then this isn't so much a Steadicam, but it sort of comes down and ends up below her. And the actress, Jacki, Kerin's actually walking between the rails of the dolly. So the cameraman was amazing in this, and he actually ended up winning a position as the Steadicam operator in Yentl. After this film, he went across to the States, and the very first day, he was basically set into position to record a sequence with Barbra Streisand singing a song, and he was basically sent in with a single camera and said, you need to do this. And he does the entire shot on his own with no other crew. So the Steadicam work in this film is amazing, and there are some stunning sort of sequences in that. I don't really know where else to go from there.
It's just so well shot.
A lot of the stuff with Linda running scared looks brilliant.
Oh, something else I love about this. It drives me, like you had with that person staring at a thing that disappeared. What do we think? It's like someone lights a match or a torch and they suddenly have stadium lighting. I really love that the power went out and Linda finds a torch. I mean, the torch is rigged to be brighter than normal, but they actually used lighting from that. And they've got some people with whiteboards travelling alongside her to reflect light.
Ooh, clever.
Yeah, but they actually used night for night shots, mostly, and didn't just make everything blue. But, okay, so she's scared, the power goes out, she finds a torch, but goes looking for the cat, instead of going to the circuit board.
Sure, we all love cats, but I'm not sure why she needs to find the cat at that moment.
At that point in time.
Puss, puss. Hey, kitty, 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 kitty.
The
No.
cat obviously has not caused the power outage.
Look, we don't know. You've got to look for the cat. It's rule number one of movies, all right? We wouldn't have had Alien if they hadn't gone looking for the cat.
Well, the cat does remarkably well for a cat in a horror movie.
Oh, yeah, they had to swap her out, actually. Because the lights go out while Linda's at a desk and we have the cat jump up onto the table. After that, we followed the cat down the corridor. It took 2 days to film. The first cat, they just couldn't get to jump up on the table. They were joking about...
Using a wire. Sort of running it down a wire onto the table.
The crew joking about all these ways they can do it, and they only got the half and took the cat away. They got a second cat in.
the cat is remarkable in that the cat actually survives the movie.
The cat survives the movie, yes.
Yeah.
That's
Because
an excellent point.
All through that sequence, I was expecting, we're going to find the cat dead, and that's going to be the horrible sign that something's going on. But as far as we can tell, the cat just takes a nap in poor dead Mr. Collins' bed and just carries on catting for the rest of his natural
How
life.
long has Mr. Collins been laying in state?
Yeah, it's taken a good 2 days, and the coroner still hasn't arrived to take their body away. We're talking a night, a day, and at least another night.
Because it's the middle of summer, too. It's hot out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really weird. This is not a... What was it we were watching?
And
Was
you
it this
think
one?
the old people's home would have a fairly direct line to the body taker awayers. I mean, they wouldn't need the coroner
No.
for an 80-year-old person.
Was it this
90?
one that we were watching and I said it's a hot movie? It didn't feel like a hot movie. We watched...
No, they used lots of blue in this film.
Yeah.
And they did that to make the red stand out, like the red jacket, Connie's red hat, blood, of course.
Well, also, Connie's panic sweats when she was having nightmares looked a lot like heat sweats, and
Yes, or fever sweats, yes.
so it very much felt that was a very hot scene, even if it was just supposed to convey her fear.
Yeah, that was
it
a bit
didn't
weird.
work that well. Oh, well,
Oh, is it Connie? No, hang on.
No, it was Linda. I just said the
Linda.
wrong name.
That's
Yeah.
okay. I just wanted to make sure that I hadn't got it wrong. Yep. No. Yes. Yeah, Linda's night sweats were very strange. Because that was the thing. I mean, the opening scene did seem to establish it was very hot. But then the rest of the movie didn't feel like a particularly hot
and I
movie.
think that's the blue filters.
Yeah. Although apparently it was really hot, and in fact, funnily enough, they were... which is something we haven't mentioned, the diner is a full set, full interior, exterior, complete set that they built from scratch with a very clever little east-west orientation, which we'll talk about a bit later. They knew they were going to blow it up, and they were genuinely worried about starting bushfires, which turned out to be prescient because this
Well, we're
film
not
was
saying
shot-
they started bushfires.
No.
But no, this was in the
Their
lead
concern
up
was
to the
present.
Ash Wednesday bushfires
Oh.
of the 1982-83 season.
I'm now wondering about that sign by the road, if that was in fact...
Genuinely...
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
For those who didn't see or haven't spotted, there... And they still have these signs now. There is a...
Fire danger.
Yeah, a fire danger meter sign which has an arrow that can be turned from green, which is basically normal risk, right through to, yellow, orange, red, really, really red. That last one being the highest fire danger, which is when they basically don't have a barbecue, don't light things outside, don't light things inside if you can help it.
Don't rub sticks together.
Yeah, basically everything around you is combustible and it will combust everything else around you.
Think cool thoughts.
And in the film, I thought, that's, there's the fire scene when it blew things up. Now I'm wondering if that was actually just genuinely there and they just kept it in.
Yeah, it is one of those things, on the off chance that we have non-Australian listeners, that Australia, the bushland in Australia is actually
Terrifying.
evolved around fire. Trees, the native gum trees actually drop tinder because part of their reproductive process involves bushfire. And so, for years, summer in Australia has always involved bushfires or brush fires or wildfires, depending on what you call them. This Ash Wednesday, famously one of the worst, until like the last 5 years in a row, but, famously one of the worst bushfire seasons ever. And it's one of the reasons why in that opening shot, everything is yellow, where you might normally expect grass to be a green colour over the hills. Yeah, the whole of Australia was basically a match head ready to go.
They did a good job on that diner set. I was kind of enjoying all the old, they're old now, but they were still genuine at the time, like adverts and product signs, which made it feel
Cigarette
real.
advertising.
Did you notice that the Polywaffle was apparently brand new in 1982?
Yeah, but
Sadly
it
gone.
made it feel realer than, sometimes they're too scared for product placement or too cheap for product placement or whatever,
Yeah.
and there'll be no signs, or there'll be made up products which aren't designed like actual adverts. This felt like a takeaway / diner circa 1982.
Yeah, it was...
Where 2 hamburgers plus coffee is $1.20.
It's not bad at all.
And in the first time we saw the diner, there was some nice little Chekhoving going on for the later diner scene. We saw the kids slapping the top of the pinball machine to get change out of it, which Linda would later do for the phone. And we, in fact, saw someone having trouble with the phone, that it wasn't taking the coins.
We also see Tommy Dysart's character, the diner owner, eating a sugar cube, which is actually then referenced at the very end. And of course, also there's the famous, sorry, there's also the bit where she's kind of stacking the forks as part of her. This is me, just kind of what I do. I stack things as part of my mental process. Interestingly, as a total sideline for the game nerds out there, both Space Wars and the Beatniks are genuine arcade stroke pinball machines. So Space Wars was a genuine arcade game from the time, and Beatniks was a really bad pinball machine from the time too. So.
Yeah. And poor Linda might not have been thinking clearly, but she didn't actually need the coins to dial 000, the emergency number.
Now, are we sure about that then?
100%, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, I in fact
Then
checked with
and
Telstra.
now.
Oh, there you go.
Did you phone them? Can you still do that?
There's somebody on the other end. That's fantastic.
Actually, they were very good. I sent them a message via their social media, and I was expecting to be sitting on it for days. They got back within an hour.
Oh, lovely.
That's excellent.
There is one other piece of foreshadowing, which is the fact that, I guess maybe this is years of watching movies, I always pay attention to radio or television reports
They
in
were
the
actually
background.
Italian.
Oh, no, that was in the nursing home.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah, the opening scene in the diner, there's actually a shot where you're looking at a news report on a murder that's happened, and the camera closes up on a hammer, which then makes an appearance at the end as the killer's weapon. So the suggestion is that Rita and Kelvin have been killing their way to Montclair.
Ah, yes,
Maybe
of
that's how they actually escaped wherever it was they were at the time.
Yeah, that's a good spot.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. And I will actually mention now, just on the off chance I forget, that the one other thing about that set is because that set was made from scratch with the intention of blowing it up at the end, the final shot, which we will talk about because it's an amazing final shot, was specifically oriented east to west because they had what they knew was going to be a sunrise shot, but that to get all the camera angles right, they would need a full day to rehearse. So they actually faced it west. So they would have a full day's worth of rehearsal, and then they could use sunset for sunrise at the very end. So she's actually driving into a sunset, even though it's meant to be a sunrise based on the events of the movie.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
It was very good.
Actually, that last shot was very good.
And accidental.
Oh, yes?
You go ahead, please.
I was going to say the shot is having disposed of the villains, Linda and Nico, the shop resident kid, leave the site of the diner, which is covered in sparks and petrol, and just drive off down the road. And we hold with them and we start to pan to swing back around to look toward the diner. And before we quite get the view onto the diner explodes, and the explosion is largely not in shot. It's
reflected in the fire danger sign.
Yes. And it's also just, we move on to it as it's finishing exploding. So it doesn't feel like a spectacle. It feels like almost just throwing something over the shoulder, and that's the end of that. Because that is the end of the film.
Yes.
Yeah, then cuts to credits. So you were going to say about the serendipity on the...
Because they had the camera on a crane, didn't they?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the one shot, and then you can discuss the
You go ahead and do the thing.
It blew my mind because it wasn't until I actually listened to the director's commentary that the end shot, which I'd already was kind of blown away by, no pun intended, it was pointed out that is a one shot. And that is a one shot that's amazing because it starts as a crane shot over the top of the parking lot that then actually craned down onto the back of the ute.
They bolt the camera into the back of the ute.
Yeah, and they pull the crane out of shot as quickly as they can. And then the ute drives away and the whole thing rotates. So the basic play out of the shot is crane shot over the parking lot. Linda kind of staggers out in full I've done it mode. Camera goes down into the back of the ute, close up on her, which of course is the bookend of the shot at the very beginning. There's a single flash to show that there's the first of the explosions on her, which doesn't happen in the opening shot. I did actually make a point of paying attention. She then gets into the car with Nico and she drives away, and at this point the camera is now bolted down to the back of the ute, and that spin is meant to happen to then look at the explosion, which you were going to say...
Happened slightly too early.
Yeah, it was an accident. They didn't pan fast enough. The intention was always to get the full explosion in, but apparently their pyro guy set off the explosion too early. So what ended up being the most amazing, as you say, subtle shot of catching that initial reflection on the fire sign,
which I loved,
was an accident. They just didn't get it round in time, so to speak. And then it just so happens there was a secondary explosion, which then already goes off, and it's so good. And being a wanna blows my mind, because again, everything in this film was done in camera. The idea that they had choreographed, and this was a word that came up again and again in the director's commentary, the choreograph of the Steadicam, the choreograph of the certain actors, the choreographing of the fight sequences.
And choreography by Gus Mercurio.
Yeah.
Paul Mercurio's father. From Paul Mercurio from Strictly Ballroom.
Gus Mercurio, the best character that I can remember him in was in The Man from Snowy River. He plays the angry guy in the collection of roustabouts, the one that Jim Craig actually befriends, who sort of pulls his rifle up at one point because it turns out his character has done murder or something in the past, but he's the one who's basically welcome at Jim Craig's fire.
Yeah, and Gus Mercurio has done so much more than acting as well.
Yeah. Did we want to say anything else about that final shot?
Well, the one thing I was going to add is that that's the end of the movie. It's not followed up by a piece of narration or a final scene of Linda talking to police and fire officials or, where are they now? It's just, it just ends.
Yep.
Yeah.
No setup for a potential sequel. No American voiceover going, well, that's my story.
Oh, I have to tell you a John Jarratt thing. So we have Linda and Barney. Is it just after they've been swimming when he has...
The nudie swim?
Is it just after that where he lifts her over a fence?
No, that's towards the end.
Oh, right towards the end. Okay, so Linda's freaked out. She went to find Barney.
Yeah, so she's freaked out.
Can you set the shot up for me?
I can do that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so I'll flip the camera. So basically, the John Jarratt story, there's a sequence, it's after Linda has suspected all of what's going on. I think at this point she still suspects the nurse and the doctor to be the bad guys. Mm-hmm. She goes and gets John Jarratt's character and gets him to bring her back, and they have a point where they have to climb over a fence. So there's a white picket fence.
And they had some inexperienced people working on the film, and the fence was just really crap and would just wobble, and it was just terribly built. John Jarratt himself rebuilt the fence. How Aussie is that?
Apparently he grabbed a spade and a mallet. They'd done it sort of theatre set style, so they built it like it's all very... frail.
This is for looking at and nothing else.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
But of course he actually had to
jump it. He had to put a foot on the fence post, and so he just rebuilt the fence by himself, which I just love.
Speaking of two little film connections with Quentin Tarantino, who of course famously kind of coined the phrase, Ausploitation. So Ausploitation. This was the movie that made Quentin Tarantino aware of John Jarratt as an actor, who of course John Jarratt eventually then appears in Django Unchained. And there is also a family connection to one of the guys who was on set. His son actually got in touch because he was working on a small film called Kill Bill and said, you'll never believe this, Quentin Tarantino has just taken the entire cast of Kill Bill into a cinema and we've just watched Next of Kin. As a little present to the production crew for Kill Bill. So, Quentin Tarantino apparently really liked this movie.
Midnight. One more night without sleeping. Sorry, no, that's The Green Door by Shakin' Stevens. We return to our victims, three delicate, mortal podcasters trapped in the Manor Montclair in the distant and chaotic land we call 1982.
So we have Aunt Rita terrorising Linda, and Linda gets herself into a bathroom, and Aunt Linda is looking through the old school keyhole. Linda grabs a comb, which has got a sectioning section attached. It probably has a name. That's what it's for, though, sectioning the hair. So basically a spiky bit at the bottom, which Daria told us yesterday were banned at her school. And after seeing this movie, I can picture why. Linda slams her hand down and the end of the comb through the keyhole. Just thought, well, that's remarkable coordination. I would have had to be lining that shot up, to be sitting down there. There's no way you can just stab sort of behind you and get that straight through the keyhole. Maybe that was just me.
It was a very good shot.
It was a very good shot.
Maybe if you practice, but then that's just...
But then if you practice that, there's some weird shit going on in your life.
Oh,
and you probably shouldn't work with the elderly.
This is someone who can balance forks and things in spare time. She's got good coordination.
Oh, I see.
Because that's actually one of the things. One of the things about a returning home type movie is you almost always tell throughout the film an expansion of where has the character been, what have they been up to. We get none of that, do we?
No,
the story
not at all.
starts and ends with the return to Montclair and the rediscovering her childhood before she left. There's not even a hint of where she's been.
There is a discussion that she has briefly in a car with John Jarratt, and she says she's been at a school.
A school for disadvantaged children.
Yeah.
Not quite disadvantaged.
You got any friends up there?
A few.
What kind of school is it?
It's a special school for emotionally disturbed kids.
Something bugging you?
No.
Bullshit.
Oh, I don't know. It's just that I feel unwelcome.
What do you expect after so many years? No letters, no phone calls? People are curious, that's all.
Oh, okay. Because there is actually mention of Indonesia, but that's not actually her, is it?
There's
That's
mention of Indonesia?
I've got a vague memory of someone saying something about Indonesia, but I think it's when John Jarratt is listing off what all of the people from the town have been up to since Linda...
Oh, I think you're right there.
Yeah. As well as one person whose head exploded like a watermelon.
After he got run over by a tractor.
Yep. Which is just crazy.
I think it was the director, or was it the co-producer, that said, I just used names of kids I went to school with, so I really hope these people don't see next of kin.
Perhaps that's a popular thing. Apparently all the sundry and many of the major characters from Red Dwarf are from Rob Grant and Doug Naylor's class, because they went to school together, so it's the same class.
I think it's fabulous.
I think it's one of those things that if you want realistic names, you use real names.
People.
So, J.K. Rowling did the same thing for a lot of the characters that didn't have that kind of
alliteration.
The alliteration side of things is that she at least based characters off people that she knew and so on.
I knew someone who was a writer who was very bad at creating names, and you'd always get first drafts of characters called John Kitchen and things.
Oh.
Which is a real name. But after like the sixth example of this is like, you were writing in the kitchen, weren't you?
Yes, absolutely.
I tried to get hold of you earlier. She was in her room all afternoon. She was very upset.
Perhaps she found out I was lying.
Does it matter now?
Of course it matters.
Someone's been at the files. My God, look at this.
What are you doing?
There's marks on the neck. Scratches. You said it was a heart attack.
Linda, those marks were made by Connie and the other residents trying to lift him out of the bath.
Don't come near me.
Tell her you must.
Linda, take it easy. Linda!
After a given point, was there any real advantage in not telling Linda about Aunt Rita?
No, I don't get that.
Other than the fact that she'd been lied to her whole life. Why did you lie to me? Why did my mother not trust me with this information?
She's obviously worked that out. So it then doesn't make any sense. You're completely right. For the two, it is that classic movie thing of 5 minutes speech, a minute's worth of speech.
Yeah.
This is the thing that happened. Do you know what the Matrix is? It's an artificial reality created by a robot. Yes, you can be told. You don't need to swallow the pill. Completely with you
Yes,
on that.
all right.
I don't think there's any advantage.
Yeah, and Connie even says, "Oh, we must tell her," but Dr. Barton seems determined to stick to the bit.
Yeah, which seems so strange.
I mean, I know many people may not agree, but I can understand the decision not to tell that to 4-year-old Linda.
Yes.
But especially once she returns, and once there's been a death in the bath in a similar way to the continual death in the bath from the earlier time round.
The killer baths. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
I mean, you've got to wonder if they just considered making it shower-only policy.
Well, yeah, it was also quite a hard bath to get into for anyone with mobility issues. Like, it was quite a high step to get in.
And there's no rail.
There's no rail, no.
Another thing about the Reader Secret is, given how it was only just emerging at this point, I really felt that trying to interrogate poor Lance about it when he's out of his coma for, 10 minutes.
No, I'm completely with you on that one. There was a point where it's like she's seen the pen with the bikini girl on it. She knows you're a bit of a sleaze. Just accept it. Explain. Yeah.
I need that as a reference for doing gynecological exams.
And ill.
Should we talk about the soundtrack? Because there's a couple of things to say about the soundtrack.
Yes.
So, you in particular love the soundtrack.
Oh, yes.
I'm with you on this one.
Oh, right. I mean, apart from just generally liking the actual sound, from what we're used to in horror movies, even by 1982, it feels like it should be a bit of a mismatch. All this electronic and synths and things. We should be going, where's the pipe organ? Where's the strings? Where's toccata?
Yeah. Oh,
but
I think we had that. We missed out on that in Outback Vampires.
God.
But the mismatch almost made it more unsettling.
Yes.
Yeah. And this was actually something, so you mentioned the fact that it's very reminiscent of Vangelis-y type music because it's got that very synthesizer-y sound to it. Was it you? I can't remember if you actually said that or not.
I would say it, but I haven't said it yet.
Oh, okay, right. Because they originally wanted Vangelis. He'd just come off the back of Chariots of Fire and they got in touch with Vangelis and asked whether or not he could do it, and he was apparently not available to do the film. But the director, I think it was, knew of Tangerine Dream, which was a European synth rock band. And the drummer, Klaus Schultze, was actually part of the band.
Schultze, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, he actually was in that band, and they approached him and said, would you please do the soundtrack for the film? And so he said yes. So he is a very well-known synth musician. And because they knew that they'd got him and they asked him to do it, he actually started work on production of the soundtrack. They edited all of the shots to his existing music.
Ooh.
Now, this is really interesting. There is an amazing... Well, the entire series is amazing, but there's a really, really good episode of Every Frame a Painting, which we might have mentioned on this podcast before.
Oh, I hope
so. It's a collection of about 24 vignettes on film production in one form or another. And this is one of the last ones that talks about movie soundtracks. The entire series is worth a look, but this in particular is a really interesting one, commenting on the way that film scores in some genres are really kind of forgettable in this day and age. And one of the reasons why they're forgettable is they all start to sound like each other. And one of the reasons they sound like each other is that they're often not guilty of, but directors will cut films and edit films to existing musical scores. And then they go to the musician and they say, can you make a score that sounds like X, Y, or Z? Now, in this instance, when the actual music was sent by Klaus to the guys in Australia, they found it didn't fit their film because they'd already cut it to his own music, but from actual albums. So they actually had to go back and say, look, we really like the music that you've already made. Can we use that instead? So this is one of those really weird situations where the temp music did define the movie, but it didn't mean a problem for the musician because it was to his own music anyway. But yeah, it is. It's really good. I'm trying to think of a better way of actually describing that. It does mismatch. It is a mismatch with the thing on film, and it's actually mentioned a couple of times that the director did like it when the soundtrack doesn't necessarily match what's happening on film. He mentions, singing in the rain during the crime and rape sequence in Clockwork Orange. So to have that style of music is really unusual. It was very cool.
He also said he regretted, and I agree with him wholeheartedly on this, regretted not having surround sound. So all these atmospheric pieces early on, which were meant to be scary but just weren't because they just didn't have the sound right.
The jump scare moments of things like the dressmakers dressmaker's
dummy
falling, and then the finding of the doll weren't quite as impactful as you normally combine a jump scare like that, which I've got to be honest, I find a bit cheap and cheesy, but jump scares are a mainstay of horror films. You match it with a crashing chord or a big noise or something to really scare your audience.
Like I said at the start, I didn't feel like I was watching a horror until so far in, but had they had the sound that they wanted to have, I think that would have made a huge impact.
Yeah, and I can imagine in particular that loft sequence where she's in the rain. You can imagine that as, if you were surrounded with the noise of the rainfall happening, would have been really kind of impressive. The one other thing I was going to say just about that soundtrack, there is a sequence where she drives back to the house and she parks under the sprinkler because, we all park under a sprinkler.
Maybe the car was dirty. It's dusty out.
Yeah. That would make sense. No, it wouldn't make sense. Why am I saying that?
We don't know.
Because I lost my train. Oh, no, okay, right.
You caught the next train?
I did catch the next train.
Excellent.
The sequence where the actual sprinkler noise is there, because they already had the soundtrack, because they already had the temp music, they actually made the sound of the sprinkler match the tempo in the score.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yes.
Oh, well done.
And then the score picks up, and that's actually the moment where they dial it up to the next level. That's where she's beginning to put the pieces together, and suddenly we go from this incredibly slow burn first half of the movie to the much quicker cuts and the much quicker kind of sequences, and she finds bits and she's hiding and she's much more on that next level. As the director said, it's the moment when she ceases to be one of those classic screaming at all the terrible thing type
hysterical
women cliche and becomes her own little motivational force and actually sort of steps up to the horror and kind of sort of owns it a bit, which is cool. So that's actually really awesome with the music.
There was a really weird relationship with the residents of the rest home because, they were helping get the laundry in off the line, and they were part guests, part family almost, the way they spoke to him. Like she said to Lance what a mess the books were in. So that's an odd thing to say to someone who's just regained consciousness.
And they're also helping getting dead bodies out of the bath too. So.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, at first I thought Lance was staff because the first thing we see is helping with the laundry.
Well, no, he's watering the plant just as about to storm.
Yeah.
And then there's that...
there's the most fabulous Lance scene. Okay, so just after the tree comes down, the lightning hits the tree comes down, it stops the car, and we have the aunt and her, we presume, son coming in, and Lance is there, and we're going to the front door, and it's pouring with rain. Linda's knocking on the front door. Lance starts up a diatribe about being locked out of the barracks one day, and it was pouring down like this, and they couldn't hear over the munitions and whatever else. He continues that for a fair while. It was all ad-libbed. He just made it up.
I was locked out of the barracks. It was teeming with rain just like this.
Ratti!
Enemy shells started exploding all over the bloody camp. And I couldn't get in.
What happened? Door slammed. Didn't you slip the lock? I'm sorry, Mr. Ryan. You must be tired after your long journey. This is Linda, Mr. Cooney, Mrs. Ryan, and Mr. Ryan. Wasn't your aunt happy in the last post?
They weren't happy.
I'd been out to inspect on the trees, you see, and I got back and I couldn't make anyone hear. Thunder was coming and the explosions all over the bloody place. I didn't know what the hell to do. And it doesn't often rain in North Africa, but my God, when it does, it just comes down in buckets and lumps.
He was very fabulous.
Yeah, he reminds me slightly of the Major of 40 Towers.
Yes, indeed.
Or Cup of Transformers. It's the slightest nudge, going to a war story.
Well, the nurse reminds me of Connie from 40 Towers.
Oh,
I am really glad you said this because I was going to point this out. I got Faulty Towers from this.
I absolutely did. Mostly because of Connie, but also because of Lance sounding like the Major.
Lance is the Major. I got the house. There's some shots of the house that are very much like the hotel in Faulty Towers. And even the point, and it was really funny, when Rita first appears, and I'm like, she reminds me of an actress playing an older person. And I could see that it was clearly a younger actress portraying an old one. And I remembered where I got it from. There's a moment when Basil's wife runs away because she thinks Basil's forgotten their wedding anniversary. Oh. And he ends up having to get Polly to pretend to be...
She's played by Connie Booth.
Yeah, she is Connie Booth as the actress.
That'd be it.
He gets Polly to dress up as
Sybil
Faulty. And she looks really similar. She's in a chair because she's meant to have the mumps, so she can't talk. So she's got the wig on.
Oh,
and,
right.
And I just, all the way through, I got little Fawlty Towers. It's just like if Fawlty Towers was a horror film, it's almost like this is what Fawlty Towers would be as a horror. It's kind of crazy.
Oh my goodness, it's Fawlty Towers without the horror, but without the men. There's no Basil and there's no Manuel.
No, this is very true. It's
without the key men.
There's even the little old ladies, the little old lady with the Walkman as one of the two kind of...
going on the bus tour shouting, I can't hear you. I must have been looking away from the screen when I first watched it. I just thought she was deaf. I watched it again today. Oh, you're wearing the Walkman, of course.
Yes. And apparently there's a lot of in-jokes for those...
Oh, the Walkman was only just out. And all these people working on the thing, I was just like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, the sequence with the Walkman is hilarious because I actually remember thinking the first time, he's yelling at her, why would he not just take the Walkman headphones off?
He doesn't know what it is.
Doesn't know what it is. Doesn't know to lift them off there.
Why does he have a ventriloquist koala?
Keep the oldies in line.
Radio.
Stop them from wandering off. But apparently there's a lot of nods during those sequences with the elderly residents to the original killing techniques that were going to be used in the movie Sticky End that they were planning. We don't know what they are. Tony, the director, didn't actually elaborate. But yeah, there's a lot of
Did it have something to do with the bath?
Well, apparently, like the sequence where the vacuum cleaner's interfering with the television, which used to be a thing, young'uns. There was a period where
I didn't know this.
There were periods where electrical devices would interfere with other electrical devices big time. And, if you didn't have the antenna aligned just right, you couldn't watch the cricket because the vacuum cleaner was going. Or...
Yeah, I don't think a vacuum cleaner actually interfered with the television.
But you said your neighbour's power tools did.
Yeah. Yeah, I think our vacuum cleaner was just lucky and it wasn't one that interfered. But, of course, it was loud, so,
Yes, exactly.
Well, there's that too. But no, I do remember watching television in the lounge room at my granny and grandpa's place. And if granny was vacuuming at the time, you get kind of like static lines across the TV. I don't think you went full static, but you certainly got that interference.
Other thing is, of course, power outages used to be much more common. So it's not as alarming in 1982 as it might be in 2018 when the power just stops for no apparent reason.
Yeah. I noticed. I don't know whether...
Especially in the middle of summer.
Yeah, I guess. This is true, yeah. Of course, middle of summertime, you're losing it all the time when people's ratty old air conditioners are kind of sapping all the power.
Yeah.
But I did notice maybe it was part of that intentional slow burn, but all of the kind of classic scream, even to the point where, the boyfriend is notionally, has crawled through the window and then wakes her up after she's beginning to go a bit wiry around the edges.
Oh, right, yes.
There's not that massive screams, big jumps, and that. It's all... kind of handled as it, oh my goodness, that's a start. She spins round and finds Connie, the first time we're introduced to the nurse, and she doesn't even jump. There's not even a big gasp.
No.
She just kind of says, oh, Connie, so yeah, that was really kind of cool. It didn't...
Well, I guess she's perhaps generally relaxed at the start and then just gets more and more tense as, of course, it builds up around her.
You mentioned the improv scene of Lance, Charles McCallum's sequence, where he's going all full Abe Simpson. The other one is the speech to the Country Fire Association by the guy when Linda's lost it and she's basically looking for John Jarratt. She bursts in. The guy who's actually in the middle of giving the speech to the people, that's all improv as well.
There was nothing on page. He's just like, yeah, I've been to plenty of these things. I'll be right.
And in fact, the point where he says, so if any of you are planning on having an argument with your wife, it's
On
like when he's
Saturday.
actually looking at them, that's all completely improv, and just he basically fed into the action between John Jarratt and Jacki Kerin. So that was really awesome too. Where she's yelling at him outside in orchestra, and that sequence where she's trying to divulge what's going on and he's screaming at her, calm down, I can't.
But that was improv too.
You don't get any actual dialogue.
No.
It's intentionally crashing chords, and it's like, you're speaking, screaming at me in orchestra, stop it.
There's no reason why we can't be in the top three. Let's not come seventh like last year. And as you know, only the top brigade gets into the regional competitions. Most of all, fellas, it relies on teamwork. I want you to be familiar with the equipment on both trucks, the old Austin and the Inter. If there's anything you're still not sure about, just talk to Ken or myself. But for Christ's sake, don't just shrug something off as, oh, that's Joe Blow's job. Because Joe Blow's probably off doing someone else's job, all right? Winning means teamwork. Less drinking and more thinking. Now, if for some reason you can't make it next Saturday because you plan on having a fight with your missus or something, George, do you want to...
For Christ's sake!
when she has to go out through the outdoor and can't go back.
Can't just pull the bolt. Why did she not pull the bolt to open the door?
Or if that door really was stuck, why couldn't she just go out the one she came in through?
Yes, exactly.
That whole sequence is very unusual. Like, you wouldn't stop the speech the minute an obviously deranged woman with, I think, blood on her at that point?
No, she was dirty.
She was very dirty, yeah.
But she's obviously distressed about something.
Yeah. So you just pause. Can I help you?
Are you right there, love?
I was about to say love, probably, because it's the 1980s.
Of course, it could have been, are you right there, Linda? Because, of course, small town. We all know that's Linda. Welcome back.
Linda, who's come back from beyond.
From the big smoke.
From the big smoke. From wherever it was she was, dealing with the people.
Not much is actually made of the return part of her return.
No, it's...
She says she feels unwelcome, and John Jarratt says, well, you know, what do you expect? You've been away for years, no phone calls, no letters.
Yeah. So...
But then says people are just curious.
I know, it's really weird. And
it's a bit odd.
And speaking of phone calls, so there's two things within the film itself. There are obviously a couple of sequences where John Jarratt wants to talk to Linda, and there's one where he actually goes to the phone box.
The telecom phone booth.
The telecom phone booth, and then the truck drives past so loud that it hangs the phone up.
At her end.
Yeah, I know, it's so strange. But then also at the very end where she's trying to find change for the phone too. Of course, this was made before mobile phones were ubiquitous.
Or existed at all. 82.
They technically existed, but nothing like what we've got now.
No, they had those massive suitcases with a giant aerial on them, I think. Yeah, but certainly, not anything that would have been available to any normal people. And even for productions, and this was the other thing, the film production itself didn't have mobile phone access and didn't have any way of getting in touch with people on the production.
They had to go around and find phone calls as well.
Yeah.
Because, of course, that diner was a set. They didn't have a real phone in there.
It's amazing. They would actually find a local phone booth and ring up the production office when they'd actually made changes. Because, of course, the other thing was the production notes were all apparently written on stenograph, I think he said. It wasn't just done on computer, so that if they changed the order of shots, the typists would all get really upset because they'd had to retype the production notes for the following day. So, yeah. Back when we couldn't all immediately communicate with each other whether we wanted to or not.
Kind of a shame John Jarratt's character died. I was building up to him secretly surviving and turning evil because of his experience to go on to be the guy in Wolf Creek.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah, he's rather likeable in this, and it's just going to make it much harder next time I rewatch Wolf Creek 1, 2, or 3.
Well, yeah, there is that, because there was that moment when they filmed the original Wolf Creek. By that stage, John Jarratt was a truly lovable character in McCloud's Daughters, which was a semi-short run Aussie soap, would you call it?
Yeah, it was a
series, yeah. And he played a slightly simple, I wouldn't say farm owner, but in my head, he was a lovely guy. Really, really lovely.
I can't help you out on this. I never watched it.
Nor I.
I think it's McCloud's Daughters. I hope I'm not mixing up with Blue Heelers. It was one of those. I'm pretty sure it was McCloud's Daughters. But he was a slightly simple character, really, really lovely, and then he starred as the psychotic killer in Wolf Creek. But I think before then, during this period, he was only just up and coming as an actor. He'd done
a few things before this.
Been in a couple of short films. Not short films, but been in a couple of small roles in films. And then this one, kind of sort of gave him his little leg up, maybe. Don't know. Certainly got him noticed by Quentin Tarantino, as we said.
Yes.
I was trying to work on it, like Podsploitation shared cinematic universe. But...
that's going to take some time.
Yeah, all of the events that he barely survived when he was notionally looking killed, and she left him there, so he went psycho.
That turned him bitter.
Yes.
So our killer Kelvin drives the car into the diner, and then it's smashing the windscreen out with a hammer on the way to "I'm coming to get you." Why not get out the door then?
I think by that stage, yes. I think he's broken. He's a very broken killer by that point, and smashing the window because she's right ahead of him.
It's just pure animal instinct. I can see you.
Yeah.
I cannot use tools other than this one in my hand.
Intimidation, maybe?
True.
Yes.
I mean, that was something I was going to say. Is Act 3, which you could argue is from the moment that she kind of leaves the house. And you made a really good point, Daria, in relation to the two killers. Did you want to...
Oh, yeah, we don't go for the indestructible killer, which is a sometimes annoying trait of horror films. Aunt Rita is basically dealt with as soon as Linda stabs her through the eye and, judging by the level of blood on the spike, pretty much into her brain. So even if she survives that, which is possible, she's not about to get up and start killing again.
Yeah.
There are deleted scenes on the Blu-ray that talk about this. But in the film, as we saw, basically once she stabs through the eye into the brain, she is out of the picture. And similarly, Kelvin, Takes only a minor beating first off, so that's okay. When he crashes through the diner in his truck and has his hammer, at this point he's only believably injured enough that he could still be doing this.
Yeah.
And at this point, Linda grabs a shotgun and shoots him in the head, and he dies because his head blows off.
Well, the kid shoots a couple of times first.
Yeah.
And then they shoot the hole in the fuel tank.
Yep.
So, brains splattered all over the interior of the van, and then blowy uppy.
Then blowy uppy at the
Yes.
very end. So I would say, yeah, that whole third act, final act, fourth act, I don't know what it is, but basically that whole sequence where she goes kind of almost total Terminator mode, it is kind of nice to have had that trope kind of turned on its head. And there's a few of those that are like that, because it's suddenly occurring to me now, because I had a note about the fact that the love scene, I swear the love scene cut is a very similar love scene cut to the one in Terminator, the original Terminator. The backs in the moonlight kind of sequence, and so on. Now, normally if somebody has sex in a film, and especially a film like this, they're going to die.
Yes, good point, good point.
She has sex and a shower.
Yeah, this is true.
And
oh my
lives.
God. But he doesn't. John Jarratt's character has sex, and he gets killed. So the idea that that's turned on its head, that it's insofar as there would have been even, I mean, I don't know, I'm always very aware of reading too much into these, you know, and tropes are there, not necessarily because people are intentionally following them, it's just that these are cycles that have been created over many, many films. And this one was early enough that a lot of that sort of classic stuff hadn't been established. But, yeah, she does go really full independent killer mode, and to then have those killers actually be genuine just people who get disposed of in properly disposed of kind of ways. It's really cool. I really like that. In another film, in that last bit, you'd probably be thinking, just shoot him, just shoot. Oh, why aren't you just shooting him? This one, you go, just shoot. Oh, go on. With an amazing cut as well. From the red of the moment that you know is there in the head to the cut of the sunset. Well, sunrise.
Yes.
Sunrise, which is really cool. I really, really like that.
Harry told me Dysart's going to be so pissed when he comes back.
Yeah.
He really is.
He apparently spent the whole night hunting rabbits.
I know, what the hell, man? You would imagine by that stage he would have come home with...
But we don't know how many burgers he has to make.
Well, how many rabbits are out there?
It's true. Oh, come on.
Rabbit.
Did your parents grow up eating rabbits?
I don't think they grew up eating rabbits. Both my parents were from the UK. But,
oh, yeah, obviously.
Yeah. No, that's okay. But yeah, no, I totally rabbit absolutely would have been a mainstay and stalwart of that diet.
They were considered a pest there.
Well, people used to eat rabbits a lot more than they do now, too.
Yeah, this is true. It's a shame because rabbit is quite tasty.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. It's not bad.
I mean, I was about to say, because your parents might be from the UK, but there was certainly rabbit eating going on in the UK.
This is true. Yes.
During the war, you know.
Well, I also remember that promo for a rabbit pie they were selling, and they tied it into Watership Down.
Oh, Lord, that's...
Oh, God.
Not okay.
You've read the book, you've seen the film, now eat the pie.
Oh, God, yes. I think Dad told me about that. You eat the cast? Oh, my God. There was one other thing I was just going to say, the one other little bit which was mentioned in relation to the killers and maybe stepping away from those tropes. During the scene where she's actually gone back into the house and she's kind of being chased by the killers through the various areas and other things are done, like the murder of the doctor and the nurse and so on, the director and the producer and another guy actually sat down and worked out what was happening behind the scenes, worked out where they were leaving from in the house and where they were going to ensure that the sequence of events as they were filmed could actually happen. They weren't just going to do that whole, you've appeared in the attic, therefore you're now immediately in the cellar. And
well, when there's two killers, it's much easier.
True, but a lot of film doesn't seem to... A lot of this kind of genre film doesn't seem to really care too much about that. We'll just have them appear behind.
Reality.
You know, and you get that point of, who stacked up the bodies in such and such a scene, or watch any Cracked After Hours on YouTube and they talk about, when did you stop to do X, Y, or Z?
Yeah.
They actually made a point of planning it out, so it made sense.
And in fact, as we saw with Mr. Collins, at least, this doesn't have magically disappearing dead bodies.
No!
Yes.
That happens a lot in, just any film or TV show of killing in it.
And Linda gets Lance out of the house because it's dangerous. But aren't they meant to be in the middle of nowhere? They're just shuffling this ancient man out into the night in his jammies.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose in the short term, it's better for him than in the house with the killers.
True.
Yeah, my brain keeps telling me that the manor also blew up, but it didn't, so maybe he just went back inside after a while.
Yeah.
I did kind of get the impression that he was basically being walked out, and he was taking a lot in his stride, wasn't he? He took an awful lot, because considering he was the one who put his foot down on the dead man in the bathtub.
Yes.
He seemed to take a lot.
Oh, he's seen a lot in the war.
He would have done.
Yeah.
And Dr. Barton did imply that his cognitive processes had taken a blow in the most recent stroke, which happened because of the bath stepping.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they were really good. As I said, I mean, could you really say they were tropes when we're talking 1982? Because they weren't really established by that point.
Well, a lot of them were. I mean, we're talking classic horror, and we're well into the 1930s.
No, that's true. Actually, that's a really good point. Especially considering that the producers were actually, marking things like Hitchcock films and stuff to then sort of make those steps away. Whether it be production-based, as you say, there was intention to make Rita one of those unkillable killers. She gets apparently hot marmalade poured on her face at one point, and I think she was meant to be stabbed at one point separate to the eye as well, that she's meant to reveal that her eye is fine. So how that all was meant to play out.
That eye's not coming out fine.
No.
Even if it didn't go that far into your brain, eye's gone, mate.
When you're talking about horror tropes, you can almost split them into two once you start following down the decades. There are the fairly classic ones, which we're sort of discussing for this film, and that's where you get a lot of things like the unstoppable killer, the we better split up for no good reason, don't have sex, don't have a shower, etc., etc. And the more, I suppose, vicious ones, where you're getting some of the more graphic and gone or torture pornorific horror films now, which play by separate rules, haven't quite been codified yet, but it's starting to form.
Yeah.
And you can see the awareness of the former set, and I think many people are if they think about it or not. In fact, the entire of Cabin in the Woods, the Joss Whedon film, is based around the idea that the audience will know those tropes and be familiar with them.
Yeah. And they are. We must split up. We have the jock, we have the smart one, we have the virgin, we have the whatever. And, I mean, Cabin in the Woods, if you haven't seen it, you've got to see Cabin in the Woods.
Yes,
if you
indeed.
enjoy or are even peripherally aware of the kind of default horror tropes, it is an amazing movie and really revels in it.
I'll put my hand up here and say I'm a total wuss and I love zombies, but I often don't watch them because I get scared easily. So I don't necessarily watch a lot of horror. This film's amazing. Absolutely watch it. And if you're like even wussier than I am, watch it with director's commentary. That's how I get through scary movies if I'm too scared to watch them.
I used to be the same, and since meeting my flatmate, we sort of went through a crash course because she loves horror films and wanted to watch all of the Saw films.
Oh.
And by that point, there were already the 7 of them.
Jeez.
And I was like, okay, these have intrigued me plot-wise. I guess if I can always tap out and just leave because this is, my home anyway, and my flatmate next to me and all the rest. And I think partly in that, I just started to become desensitized, but also very aware of the tropes we've been talking about. So maybe
You watched it with a scholarly eye.
That's just the word. And to the point that I'm saying things like, ooh, when does Raw come out on Blu-ray?
I've got a couple of little post or out of production notes if anyone's got some. So there's a couple of things I wanted to point out. As we might have mentioned briefly, the film was originally intended to be filmed in New Zealand, and then the producers actually came to Australia to make the movie. The Marching Girls sequence, when they're reflected in the mirror when Linda first goes into town to meet up with John Jarratt.
Oh, yeah.
That's apparently a nod to the New Zealand heritage. Apparently every small town in New Zealand has a marching band. So that's a nod to the little New Zealand heritage on that.
Oh, wow. Read it entirely wrong.
Oh, what was yours?
I thought there's a military academy across the road.
Right.
Yeah, no, apparently it is just the thing. So, who knew? It really, really bizarre.
My conclusion isn't impossible, but a lot less likely.
No. One of the other things which was actually pointed out on the director's commentary was that there's a sequence where John Jarratt's driving Linda back to the house and she's reading a book. And apparently there was a big discussion during production about what book she should be reading. But then they realised as they were doing the commentary that you couldn't tell what the book was because you can't actually make it out because it's slightly blurred.
And they'd forgotten what it was.
And it turns out, because I did a bit of checking, and it is a book called Lambda 1, which was a collection of science fiction short stories edited by John Carnell. The question as to which of the short stories she's reading and why it's particularly relevant to the book, unfortunately I didn't have time to research, but if you are interested, have a look on there. There's about half a dozen short stories, and any one of them might actually be this nice. There's a Michael Moorcock short story in there, for example, so yeah, there could be some special link in there which we haven't actually uncovered.
And she has the same glasses as Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yes. Yes, it's a bit disturbing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, is that just a
80s thing? Early 80s rural.
Glasses were very big in the 80s.
Glasses were very big in the 80s.
Very big. And I don't mean that they were very popular. They were big. Big chunks of glass in front of your face if you just would watch just about anything from that era.
I think, yeah, if it were 3 years later, they'd be thick plastic with bright colours. Many bright colours. Many multiple? Yes, you know
Many
what
multiple?
I mean.
3 years earlier, they would have been straight circles.
Yes, John Lennon style.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, she might have been on a chain around her neck. There was one other thing I was going to say, which was that the film rights to this film actually kind of vanished into obscurity, despite the fact that I think we can all agree it's actually a pretty good film, and for the era, I really liked it.
Perhaps it's, because I was given the warning that it's a terrible film or a bad film, and I don't think it is at all. There's one shot that just has a poor understanding of physics, but it's a very well done film.
Yeah.
We have when dead Barney.
John Jarratt's character.
Yeah, coming out of the wheelchair with dead John Jarratt is sent to Linda, and the wheelchair stops and he flies through the air. There's clearly that just doesn't work in normal world, but it's a very, very well done. No, it's a very well done film.
The James Bond ejector seat wheelchair is kind of bizarre.
Was there an obvious dummy in one part of that, or is that just what John Jarratt looked like?
It's hard to say.
There's a sequence where his arms are dangling down really weirdly beside his body, but it's hard to tell how much of that is the choreograph needed to fall forward without looking like you're protecting your own body with your arms.
Yeah.
There's also a bit where his face is very still and blank stare, but he is dead, so there might be very good dead acting.
Yes.
As opposed to the moment when he does the people's eyebrow in the forest sequence after they're cavorting, and Linda explains to him that she's seen somebody watching them through the woods. And so he's basically kind of looking at her, and he looks over his shoulder and lifts his one eyebrow 3 times, and it's such a cheesy expression on his face. It looks fantastic.
Agreed.
But, so the film rights turned out that after they'd actually finished the film, the company Filmco got into troubles, and there was also a rumour going around that the key financier had actually taken his own life. So, because of all of these problems, the rights apparently kind of vanished. They were probably sold off very cheaply by the company trying to get rid of their some frozen assets. So it didn't ever really get a proper Australian release, and it never really did get a proper American release. The producer and director actually hypothesised that the version that Quentin Tarantino would have watched would have definitely been a pirated version.
Pirated VHS. Terrible looking copy.
Yeah, apparently the versions were really bad. So the restoration of this film is really
Now
good.
I wonder what Tarantino's view of the film is, having been such a fan of the crappy old-looking one, and now being able to watch it on DVD.
Because I think that's part of the appeal for him, that the shitty picture quality thing. I'm not saying
needing to be ripped off.
That sounds like a diss
for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, this sounds like a diss to him, but it's not. I think that's genuinely what he likes.
Yeah. I mean, he famously did the collaboration with Robert Rodriguez. They actually had sequences where the film looks like it's burnout and kind of skips, and the sound quality is terrible. So he revels and massively enjoys that kind of bad quality.
Well, when we were getting ready for this, I saw clips on YouTube or somewhere, and it didn't look like it was from VHS because there were no VHS artifacts at all. But if that's the DVD, it was not great. And I don't mean Blu-ray is naturally better than DVD, not great. I mean,
I don't think it came out on DVD.
What, the film?
I'm just going to take a look just to double check what we all just said.
Yeah, it looks like a restoration from an original print. I can't imagine that they managed to...
Oh, yeah, it looks fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Well, just because it was a DVD doesn't mean they used it.
Yeah.
The couple of little notes that I had, which were sort of post-production notes, which I found very interesting, relates to the very end. So the wall of sugar that she builds while she's waiting... I guess while she's just waiting for Tommy Dysart's character to turn up, but in actual fact turns out to be waiting for the killer to come driving through the wall. The art department couldn't ever actually stack the sugar cubes that high. They kept falling down. and they were running to a tight schedule, so Tony Williams, the director, who had actually would stack sugar cubes between shots when he was waiting for the lighting to be right or something, he actually did it himself because the art direction basically turned around and said, if you want it done, you got to do it. So he actually made that sugar cube wall himself right up to the very top and managed to get it in time for the shot that was needed. And they basically apparently knew they had like one shot because they wanted to do it with the truck appearing.
Yeah.
And if he got it wrong or if it fell over too soon, it would completely ruin the shot, which was kind of cool. I did like that.
Yep.
But the other thing about that van is that after the van had been used in the sequence of being smashed through the wall, the producer, co-producer Timothy White, actually drove that van home, parked it outside his house. And when he woke up the following morning, he found that the police had actually taped it off because it was full of bullet holes and smashed window and fake blood.
Brain matter.
And during the night, some people had actually seen it and had called the police. And so the police actually turned up on his doorstep and sort of roped it off, and he was not very popular back then.
Yes, he woke up to police and a gathering crowd.
Yes.
German DVD. Turns out there's a German DVD release.
Which is something that we discovered funnily enough, when we were looking at Outback Vampires, which it turns out that Germany has an apparent fascination with Australian horror movies. There is a website that reviews them, all of them, even ones we'd never heard of. And yeah, so there we go. So there was a German release, and in fact, the Blu-ray includes a couple of extras, including the alternative start with the German.
Yes, it did, didn't it? That's right.
Which was a very weird thing to include.
It was just the opening credits, wasn't it?
It was literally the opening credits.
Yeah.
Just with the German title superimposed over the English title.
Yeah. So it was like, we were waiting for some incredibly European acceptable opening shot, and it was just the credits. So couldn't find any financial information about this movie. I think that whole confusion with the financiers has probably indelibly put that in. Whether or not the release will ensure that it starts to make a bit of money, who knows? But it is definitely worth watching.
Made some money off us.
It did indeed, absolutely, as always. There were 3 awards that this one was involved with.
Support your local film industry.
Please do. And remember, it is worth actually spending genuine money on these things, because even if what you're watching isn't the best, it does mean that people get a chance to make more. And it's
Does that still work from 40-something years ago?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm going to say yes.
Yes, well, not as directly, because it's not all going to the people waiting to make Next of Kin 2.
Yes.
Damn.
But
Rita's return.
Once you layer through things like loyalties and that it goes generally to Australian companies who can make Australian things. I mean, Umbrella Entertainment have a production wing.
Oh, it's worth letting you know as well. Umbrella have a streaming service.
Yes. So even if you can't necessarily find a hard copy version of this, you'll often find that what we'll talk about, especially if they've been released by Umbrella, is available for streaming. So
yes.
Throw them a couple of dollars. Yeah, 3 awards.
Kept that sponsor.
Thank you, Umbrella.
Yeah, I think I have a funny feeling that this podcast is going to be largely supported by Umbrella and Madman. I imagine that they're going to be quite a big provider of content.
Umbrella has very much been for Australian film what Madman has been for Asian film.
Yes. Although Madman does have quite a few Aussie films too. So.
And Umbrella has a few foreign films too. So.
That's good. Cross-pollination. Yeah, so the other thing I was going to say, so it won, it was nominated for the 1982 Best Editing in the AACTA Awards, which are an Aussie Film Institute award for 1982.
I can see that.
Yes.
It won a special mention at Mistfest, which I didn't actually do any checking to see what that was. But it also...
Missed, as in I missed something, or missed M-I-S-T?
M-Y-S-T.
M-Y-S-T.
I can't imagine it's got anything to do with the Mist video games, which turned 25 years the other week. Oh, so sad. So awesome, but so sad.
Okay.
And it also won Best Director at the Sitges, I don't know how to pronounce it, S-I-T-G-E-S Film Festival, which is a Spanish film festival.
Wow.
Yeah, so it got Best Director. So got a bit of notice here and there, despite the fact that it apparently had very dodgy release versions.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And from Europe again.
Yeah, again. So it does seem that despite the love of that Aussie style over in America, it really does seem to be the Europeans that kept picking up on these movies and giving them the awards that we think they so richly deserve.
On occasion.
Maybe.
This one did.
Sometimes. This one did. And on to that.
I reckon that's about it.
Yeah, well, what do we think it richly deserves in terms of scores?
I'm absolutely giving this 4.5 stabbed eyeballs. This is a really, really good film. For what it is and the time it was made, I actually really enjoyed it. Even though it's not what I would class as a classic horror or even necessarily an overly scary horror, I thought for what it was and the timing.
I'm not going to be that as generous as you are being here because it took a long time for it to establish itself as a horror movie. But it was I'm not saying it's a great horror film, but it's a very good film. They've done things really well in this movie.
Mm. Yeah, I'm prepared to go as high as 4 soggy berries.
Yes. And I'll go 4.
4. Do you want stabbed eyeballs, soggy berries, or something else?
Ooh, bloody fountains.
Ooh, 4 bloody fountains.
4 bloody fountains.
Did like the bloody fountain. That was a good touch. Oh, and as a little sideline on that, the production designer, someone in the art department was this lovely English lady.
Oh, God, yes, this is the greatest.
Makeup, that's right. And
makeup artist.
This apparently lovely little British lady who was told that they needed an actress whose throat had been cut, so she went and actually studied photos.
She went to the police department and asked to look at photos, which is a thing you can do, apparently.
Apparently, and sort of studied photos of people with their throats cut, and then took these photos back to the director to show him and said, "Is this what we would like?" in this really sweet voice, and he apparently nearly threw up.
Which I love.
One of the other things, which is a real kind of thing for me about this being a horror movie, I had a definite visceral reaction to a sequence in the film, and it's when she walks across the bathroom floor that's flooded in her socks. Because...
Oh, yeah, that really disturbed you.
Wet socks.
We watched it together.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Wet, fluffy socks? Ew. Yuck.
Well, no, you said that, and then I pictured, like, in summer, you go outside in your socks and you step on a snail, and it's worse than stepping on a snail in bare feet, is stepping on a snail in socks.
Ew.
Yeah, it's terrible. Anyway, glad you all have that image now.
I wonder whether I should dial it back. Maybe 4.5 is too much.
Well, you didn't say out of how many. Maybe it's 4.5 out of 6.
How many eyeballs are you going to cut back for the wet socks?
Maybe half an eyeball. I'm looking at it in retrospect, and I think we may have a couple of genuinely brilliant movies here. So I'm going to dial it back. I am going to go with the general consensus. I think 4 stabbed eyeballs, definitely a thing.
All right.
Definitely 4 stabbed.
Definitely?
Definitely 4.
Definitely
4.
And on
after you, Ratti.
On that optical assessment, I've been Daria.
I've been November.
I'm still Callum.
Thank you.
Somehow, the trio have survived this Halloween scare and related a tale as old as time, as true as it can be. Curse you, Angela Lansbury. Join them next month to see how they fare against a strange and terrifying creature. A creature known only as Barry Mackenzie. Good night, films. Try to get some sleep, if you dare. Thank you for listening to Daria, November and Callum on Podsploitation, the Ozploitation podcast. If you want to get in touch, you can find us on Facebook, on Twitter is @Podsploitation, and by emails to podsploitation@gmail.com. The theme music is Creation Time ID 121 by Kilo Cuts, used with their kind permission under Creative Commons. Their work can be found and purchased at musicbrowse.de. All other clips are for review and illustrative purposes only, remain the copyright of their respective holders, and no claim or infringement is intended. The undead host was Ali. No OAPs were harmed in the making of this podcast.
G-O-G-G-O.